hadith itself. It's in the hadith.
Right.
The hadith has a volume of lots of eschatological views.
Okay.
Yes, but there is so much tremendous amount of information and detail in the Bible, significant amount of detail.
Yes.
I remember even in high school, Sheikh Ayyad, graduate from Al-Azhar University of Egypt, says we can take the women as concubines, and slaves and things like that.
Yeah.
I remember one student said we can have children with concubines. One student asked the teacher, is it consensual? And the teacher said it doesn't have to be consensual. You know what that means? But when I read Zechariah, in Zechariah chapter 14, it says, if I may open to that, that part of the Bible, Zechariah 14.
Next to the last book in the Old Testament, for those of you who don't know, which would mean most all of our Muslim viewers.
There it is. For I will gather all nations to battle against Jerusalem. Okay? The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, and the women ravished. You see? Half the city shall go into captivity. So I began to ask myself, how could the God of the Bible, this is the false Bible, the false book, because the Quran is a true document. How could the tainted document reject ravishing the woman? Because here God condemns ravishing the woman in Jerusalem.
Right.
Then the Lord will go forth and fight. God himself will go forth and fight those nations. And in that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. God will go forth and fight and defend Jerusalem, defend what happened to the women. And in that day, his feet, my question was, when did God have feet? Why does God condemn this and the Quran condone it? Or Islam condones it?
Good point.
Al-Jawari and all these things. And when Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, killed the Jews of Banu Qurayza and took the tribe's leader's wife to his in a tent, and he consummated his right with her, supposedly, this is okay in Islam. Why here this God of the Bible condemns rape? And in Islam, it's condoned. It's condoned in many circumstances.
Right.
There is many stories in the hadith itself about these things. Banu al-Mustaliq, when the Muslims took the women of Banu al-Mustaliq, and they haven't seen their wives in a long time, and it was permissible to them to have sex with them.
Right.
And the whole discussion was about coitus interruptus.
If that's okay or not.
If that's okay or not. Oh no, you don't have to have coitus interruptus. You can just, I don't want to get into the detail of this because it's disgusting.
Yeah.
And to every human being, it's naturally that we think that this is disgusting.
Yeah.
And so I began to see the element in the Bible of the evidence. I began to examine DNA hard-hit evidence from the biblical perspective. What else? The other thing I found out, that's the reason for my book, God's War on Terror, is that I began to see that all the nations that God discusses in the Holy Bible in end times, he is addressing Islamic countries.
He's not talking so much about Russia and Rome, is he?
No. In fact, in the Bible, 16 times the Bible talks about Rome, and there is no destruction of Rome. Yet some Christians in the West tell me, well, Rome is the harlot of Babylon. I said, excuse me, you don't know what you're talking about. Rome is mentioned 16 times in the Bible. The Catholic Church is not the harlot of Babylon.
Right.
That's not true. This is inaccurate. So we have problems in the church. But if you look at the harlot and you look at the nations that will destroy the harlot, and you look at the harlot religion, it's definitely speaking of Islam. In fact, the verse I mentioned to you before, this is the man antichrist that denies the Father and the Son.
Yes.
Catholics don't deny Father and Son. Neither do Buddhists, neither do Hindus. The main religion, the main cult that denies the Father and Son, it's the mother of harlots. In other words, there is many cults out there. This is the mother, the greatest of all cults. So you can't make a combination cults in end times as many in the West claim. It's all the cults combined together as the harlot. No, you can't. It's the mother of all harlots. And if you look at even the vision of John, John was taken to the desert. He said, the angel took me to the desert. There he showed me a woman riding on a beast, a harlot religion, stemming out of the desert. It's not out of Rome, as many claim. It's out of a desert. It's in Arabia. And by the time I read even Isaiah, and Isaiah 21, God curses Arabia. Why would God curse the holy place? In fact, the Bible teaches that the these nations will destroy this harlot and the main country where the harlot came from, the false religion came from, and that is Arabia. People will argue and say, well, how is it possible that the Muslims will destroy Arabia? It's very possible. Saddam Hussein lobbed Scud missiles on Arabia, and nobody made a peep. Nobody said anything.
Right.
You see? Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi in history catapulted Mecca.
Brother Walid, I'm sorry because this is extremely interesting, and I just realized that we've kind of shifted from your testimony to talking more about your book. Yeah. Was there anything else about your personal testimony that you wanted to share? And then we're going to go formally into continuing the discussion of the contents of your book. I guess some might ask, because they've heard, former terrorists. Yes. What's that all about?
Well, I planted when I was a young kid, I was 16 years old. I was used as a mule to plant a bomb in a bank in Bethlehem. And I, of course, before that I was imprisoned. I was demonstrating in the streets. My mother couldn't really reason with me because I was a fanatic Muslim, jihadist.
Right.
So I smuggled explosives from the Temple Mount, from the, what they call Al-Aqsa. And there it was assembled in the old city of Jerusalem and smuggled from the Al-Aqsa Temple Mount down to outside of the walls, and I took the explosives to the bank and planted them on the roof of the bank because I saw some Arab children roaming around about the bank, and I didn't want to kill Arabs.
Right.
So I ended up throwing the explosive charges on the roof,
and
it exploded 5 minutes later. But thank God no one was killed. Came to the United States later on and was involved also in the PLO. I was disenfranchised with the PLO. My roommates were from Jordan. One of them, his name is Ghazi Dabaibe from Jordan, and they did not like us Palestinians because he told me what we did in the Harb Aylul al-Aswad, in the Black September. You know, that there was a civil war in Jordan.
Yeah.
The Lebanese didn't like us because what we did in the Damour and so on and so forth. So I began to see that we are really fractured.
Yeah.
So I wanted something more puritanical, so I joined the Muslim Brotherhood. At that time, the mentor his name is Jamal Saeed. He runs a mosque in Bridgeview, Illinois. Some believe that he is a colleague of Abdullah Azzam, who was the godfather of Al-Qaeda. So being under his mentorship, I grew up as, I remained as a Muslim fundamentalist in the West, here in the States.
Right.
Music wasn't allowed. We were
actually,
underground.
you became more radical, didn't you? When
more
you were
radical.
In America?
That's correct.
People need to understand that. He became more radicalized, not in the Middle East, but when he came to America. Sorry, Brother.
Yes, because they're visiting professors from the Middle East and so on and so forth. And all this testimony, I'm telling you, the media and some of the people on the internet try to deny it and try to put doubt on it.
Sure.
You know, all of a sudden, this story is not true.
Yes.
But anyway, and from that point on, you couldn't listen to music. I was underground. We were renting hotels and, training for a future jihad in America. And this was pre-Hamas. It was called, later on, it was called the IAP, Islamic Association of Palestine, which became the branch Hamas, which, by the way, gave birth to Council of American Islamic Relation CARE, which President Obama now funds and he donates money to, by the way. One of the major funding he does.
Unindicted co-conspirator with Hamas.
Yes. And this is the problem that we're having here in the West.
Amazing.
In a nutshell, when I was a Muslim all my life, there's a difference between what I read here and my life as a Muslim. By the time I finished studying the Bible, I defined the Bible in one word: Calvary. Calvary. And Islam, I define it in one word as well, with the same letters: cavalry. Cavalry. It's about war. There is salvation in Islam. There is assurance of salvation in Islam. The assurance of salvation in Islam is to die as a martyr. By the first drop of the martyr's blood, not only you will enter paradise, but you become an intercessor for 70 members of your family. In other words, you become like God. And by the time I read the Bible, Lucifer's ideology, is to be like God. I will be like God. So a Luciferian theology always makes you act as you are God, while you deny that Jesus is God. And that's the biggest Islamic dilemma. How could God become man? So on and so forth.
That's a good point. And so, real quickly, then, your study of the Bible in a year was what was instrumental in your conversion?
That's right, studying the Bible. I mean, after I did this prayer to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I was hungered in a way that I can't even describe.